Hey everybody, this is TotalGamerJunkie. I want to welcome you all back to my channel. So, in this video, I'm going to be reading the second chapter of the Blue Baron fanfic series. I'm also planning later today to read and upload the second chapter of The Only Way Now fanfic I was reading before. I've just been busy, I haven't had time to do it, but I guess people can say, if you have time to upload 10 videos yesterday, why couldn't you upload, another chapter? I guess I could have, but, it was pretty late. So anyways, let's get started. Chapter 2, Captive. Max regarded the figure looming over her. She had expected to meet a giant of a man with a physique to match his towering reputation, and he was taller than Max, but was otherwise rather delicate. A slim figure, pale skin, fine features, and deep blue eyes which Max saw had been the inspiration of the color of his planes. He'd removed his helmet, revealing a shock of short blonde hair incongruously, I don't know. He wore a British side-cut flight suit very similar to her own. Max knew that the Germans often took them from captured British pilots, but it was still disconcerting. He had also picked up her satchel. She returned her attention to the pistol, aimed steadily at her face. She drew a ragged breath, fighting panic. She'd been shot at plenty of times before, but had never confronted the prospect of being executed at point-blank range. Keeping his weapon trained on her, the Baron stooped quickly, searching through her bag and pulling out her trusty Webley revolver, which he casually tossed away into the woods. Then he stood, dropping the bag next to her. Aufstehen? What? Aufstehen. I don't know what that. Aufstehen or so, I don't know. He barked, his voice a high-pitched, fierce rasp, not the barren tone of Max's imagination. She had no idea what the word meant, so she slowly raised her hands to her head, doing her best to look like surrendering. The man grunted with aspiration, shouted, "Stand up," in heavily accented English. So I think for this one they gender swapped Chloe. Like, not that there's anything wrong with that, It's still an interesting fanfic. Her hands still on her head, Max rose, felt the intense heat of the burning aircraft on her back. The Baron reached forward, roughly frisked her with one hand. Finding nothing, he waved the gun in her face. "Name, who are you?" "Maxwell Caulfield," she said, using her accustomed approximation of a male voice, artificially hoarse. At this, he exhaled noisily, grimacing. "Of course they would send you. I should not have allowed my wingman to leave." He waved the gun at the woods, indicating a direction. "March." Max looked into the woods skeptically. "Where are we going?" "Away from here. I have seen a farm from the air. Shelter. There will be a storm tonight." "March." Oh, and there was a storm in the original game. You just got like a giant storm, imagine, just wipes out both enemy forces. If Max stayed near the crash site, she would eventually be found and rescued. No doubt this was what the Baron hoped to prevent. It seemed she had no choice. She began to walk while the Baron followed, pistol in hand. Soon they were surrounded by dense trees and were ascending a gentle slope. She briefly regretted not trying to gun him down as he crash-landed. Too late now. She was stuck, a hostage, alone in the woods with a man. Worse, if they were together long, he would surely discover her true gender, and then, depending on what kind of man he was, she might have a whole new kind of problem. She wished she still had her sight on, unless maybe this is Chloe and she's pretending to be a man as well. It's like if you've ever seen Sly 3 Honor Among Thieves, with, I think it was the Black Baron, was actually a woman named Penelope, but she disguised herself to get away with the tournament's rule about underage flyers. But the Baron had become so successful, she decided to just remain the Baron, even for years. Like, it's not clear how many years, but she says for years. Well, Sly says for years when he's narrating the story. Anyway, Let's get back to the story. Max had always kept it with her, and she had needed it. Over the years, plenty of men she had served with had found her out, and most had treated her with respect and given her the privacy she needed. A few had attempted romance and were easily rebuffed, but another officer, had come into her tent one night, smelling of rum, and threatened to expose her to the brass. Maybe he wouldn't if she was a friend of his, a very good friend. She'd brought her revolver to his head and wondered aloud why, having killed so many strapping young German boys already, she should stop at adding a single Englishman to the tally. He had fled and never spoke to her again. If he had made good on his threat, which she doubted, nothing had come of it. Oh, well, good for you, Max. Yeah, because I hate people like that, and when people, because the world today is, you got people in power, and sometimes, people use their power to make threats to their underlings, basically it's like, well, I'm not going to get into it, because, it's a whole another debate. The point is, we should be treating everybody equally, and just not, basing up power, we need to check our privilege. Alright, where was I? Now, her weapon left... Well, when I say check privilege, I mean, we should treat people the way we want to be treated, Now, anyways, where was I? Now, her weapon left behind in the woods, she was at the Baron's mercy. Best to ingratiate himself to the man. She called backward as she walked. That was quite a maneuver at the end, comrade. I was sure you'd try for the front. For a moment there was silence. Just the sound of the Baron... Sorry about that. Just the sound of the Baron crunching through the underbush, and Max feared he would not speak to her. She was relieved when he eventually answered. His accent, English, is clear enough. I would have not escaped the mountains. You know this. Max nodded. Still, you could have made it part way. Had a better chance of rescue. Behind the front? Never. And you might have shot me again. From behind. I would have been killed. I had to disable you. No, I wasn't going to shoot again. My orders were to bring you down. There was no reason to kill you. If I'd wanted, I could have done it while you landed anyway. Yes, it was possible. I was concerned. Concerned? If the situation was reversed, Max would have been a great deal more than concerned, as she was presently with a pistol at her back. How do you plan to deal with the owners of this farmhouse we're going to? She asked. There is no one there. It is Verlason. No one lives there. Oh, Max thought bitterly. That's just wonderful news. You could tell that from the air? A farm with no wagon and no animals is Verlason. Perhaps you do not pay attention. I don't know what that means. Verlason. Is that German or something? Max frowned. It seems I do not. I assume Verlason means empty or abandoned. They were heading steadily uphill, approaching a ridge, and as they ascended, Max felt the wind grow stronger and colder. She looked up at the clouds, which were darker and thicker than they had been when she'd flown through them. The Baron was right. There was a storm coming. She shivered as the breeze cut through her thin clothes, wishing she still had her fur-lined flight suit. They continued in silence for a while, as Max wondered what the Baron had planned for her. Eventually, she decided to voice the question directly, glancing backward at him. Why are you holding me captive? What are you going to do with me? Perhaps I will shoot you when I am tired of your questions. Max swallowed. That sounded like a bluff. Probably. Maybe you'd better do it then, if that's your plan. I'm cold and tired of this hike. Behind her, the Baron sighed. Not signed. If I let you go, you will go to your men and lead them to capture me. I will not be taken. If I keep you, you are a hostage in case I am found. They will be looking. It was true. They would send scout aircraft. What? Oh, okay, yeah. Sorry, I thought that was missing a word. It was true. They would send scout aircraft looking for both of them, and would find them sooner or later. Then a whole team would be sent. Conrad would be interrogated and imprisoned, while Max, if she was still alive, would be celebrated as a hero, then returned to duty in a new plane. The idea made her queasy. The crash landing had been terrifying. She'd been at war for years, pretending to be a man so she could keep flying missions against an enemy she had never hated. She loved to fly, but was sick of the rest of it. And would her military masters be able to turn the tide of the war with what they learned from Von Priest? Probably not. The Allies, reinforced by fresh American troops, had already pushed the Germans back to the Hindenburg Line. Many thought the war was nearly won, and now the Blue Baron was out of the sky. The important task was done. Max wouldn't make a very useful hostage, though. An infantry commander would likely sacrifice her to get to Conrad. I don't think it's a good plan, Conrad. Holding me hostage won't be enough to stop them. Instead, she said, stopping and turning to face him, I propose a truce. He stopped, looking at her skeptically. Max talked fast. She wanted out from under the barrel of that gun. You let me go, and if we're found, I do my best to make sure you get away. Until then, we work together. There's enough food in my bag for about 2 days. It'll be hard enough just surviving out here, and I'm too far away and too lost to find my way back. I'm stuck here just as much as you are. The Baron glanced around, clearly considering. Before he could answer, Max continued. You can't keep that gun on me all the time, and I will run away if I get the chance. If you shoot me, you're nothing but a target alone in the woods. The Baron stared at her. How do I know that you are honorable? Because I didn't shoot you while you were landing. I had time to put, 100 rounds into your plane? That has to be worth something. Slowly he nodded. It is. I will agree on one condition. Which is? Max asked hesitantly. A sardonic smile formed on the Baron's lips. Tell me your real name, Fräulein Caulfield, he asked softly. And I'm pretty sure Fräulein is the German word for woman, or something to do with female. It means woman, girl, lady, miss, madam, something like that. I'm not entirely sure, but I know Fräulein is a term used when identifying a woman or addressing a woman. I'm not quite sure what it means though. Max's eyes widened in surprise. How had he figured her out so quickly? Something in her gait? Gut? G-A-I-T. I don't know. Gait or gut? I don't know. Maybe he'd been watching her steadily as she walked. She began to eject in her horseman voice, but then she stopped. What was the point? With an effort, she let go of the clench in her throat, allowed her voice to soften to its natural register. Maxine. My name is Maxine Caulfield, but people just call me Max. The Baron nodded solemnly. He walked towards her, ejecting a magazine from his gun as he approached, looking down at her with hard, ice blue eyes. He spoke, his words sounding altogether different. A woman's voice. Okay, yep, so it is Chloe, so there wasn't a gender swap, she was just disguising herself as a man, okay, yep, so as I theorized before, so it's true. Then we have a truce. Max wondered if he was mocking her, but the feminine tone continued, and it seems we have something in common, Fräulein. My name is Chloe. With this, she handed Max the pistol's magazine. Now, if we must shoot somebody, we cooperate. Max took the ammunition and just stood there, wide-eyed and stupefied. It seemed impossible, but hearing Chloe's voice left little room for doubt. She felt an immediate sense of kingship with this other woman in a man's guise. Her mind raced, rewriting all her conceptions of the Blue Baron from a bloodthirsty villain of the skies into someone a bit more like herself. She supposed Chloe could still be a bloodthirsty villain, but it didn't seem to fit. She found herself smiling, staring up at the erstwhile Baron, lost for words. Chloe smiled back. I now cooperate with the enemy, but Maxwell was my enemy. Maxine is someone new, yes? Let us continue. Max nodded, and they turned, walking together through the skies. Whoops. No, it's through the woods. I mean, they could fly through the skies, but no, they can't walk through it. Okay, where was I? Max had 1,000 questions, but didn't know where to start or really where she stood with this unexpected woman. Chloe, she asked, is that a French name? Chloe nodded. My grandmother was French, I am told. Oh, Max didn't want to push too hard. Let us discuss our craft, Chloe said. My favorite was the Fokker trip plane, the DR-1. Did you ever fly the British one, the Sopwith? Yes, briefly, solid, but just for one gun and the controls were heavy. It looked like an excellent plane. We were quite intrigued when it appeared. If the triplane was your favorite, why were you flying in a biplane today? Chloe rolled her eyes. Because I did not want to die. The triplane is veralted, too old. The D7 is more capable. I helped with the design. Oh, Max said impressed. She just flew the things. But it's still not your favorite? Chloe shrugged. It is a machine of war, effective. The triplane was graceful. It danced in the sky, you know. What about that, what is it called, that you had? The Scout Experimental 5. It's the best we have, better than the Camel. There just aren't enough of them. Yes, that ridiculous gun on the wing, it can fire upwards. It is very annoying. Max chuckled. It's handy, but you have to carry the ammunition in the cockpit and reload by hand. It's not easy. I had wondered. They continued to talk planes as they walked, the conversation growing more fluid as they both relaxed into each other's company. They crest the ridge just before the dust and squinting could just make out the farm they'd saw on the valley floor. It was still miles away, a small house and barn barely visible in a clear area surrounded by sparse woods. Ach, Chloe said. It seemed closer from the air. As they descended the ridge into the valley again, surrounded by trees, they shared a package of hand-dried biscuits from Max's satchel. Chloe wrinkled her nose. Are all your rations so bad? I hope that I will not be eating these for long. I have a bit of cheese and some tea and sugar. In your iron ration? Luxury. Do you have coffee? Just tea. I will enjoy the cheese. I didn't say I was going to give you any. I thought we would cooperate. That doesn't mean I have to give up the best parts of my meagre supplies. Was that meager? M-E-A-G-R-E? I think that's meant to be meager. I'm not too sure. I'll just say meager. Meager supplies. It's not my fault you didn't bring any of your own. It is precisely your fault. Your bullet went through my fuel tank, then exploded my bag, destroyed the packages. All my food was full of fuel. Chloe's emergency rations would have been in the cockpit, which meant that a few inches over and Max would have killed her in the plane. Max would have flown home intact, having downed the Blue Baron, an unbelievable victory. She wouldn't be stuck here in the mountains. To her surprise, Max found she preferred the mountains. She imagined reading the report from whoever they sent to retrieve the Baron's body, proclaiming Chloe's secret, the sick feeling in the pit of her stomach. Chloe spoke again, breaking this dismal chain of thought. I have not had a bite of cheese in 2 years. Someone got a wheel of Emmental, I do not know how, and traded slices of it for tobacco. Oh, Max said, they always give us a little cheese. I guess you can have it. Thank you. Soon it began to rain, cold, fat autumn droplets. Max hugged her shoulders but was soon soaked and shivering. She fell behind Chloe, ducking her head to keep the rain out of her eyes, blindly following the backs of Chloe's boots. They had stopped talking and walked in silence in gathering darkness for what seemed like ages. The rain intensified, but it didn't matter. Every thread of Max's clothing was already wet, and she was shivering badly. Chloe, she was sure, was perfectly warm and dry in her purloined Sidcoat suit. Max's legs were heavy. She plodded on. Eventually they emerged from the trees into weedy, muddy open ground. The going was harder here, mud sucking at their boots, tall weeds impeding their progress. The moonlight was almost entirely shut out by the storm, and Max could no longer make out anything in the dark and driving rain. She was beyond cold, was going numb all over. She stumbled, fell to one knee, squelching into the mud. Her legs simply refused the order to stand. Then she felt Chloe put an arm around her, pull her up. Come along, Maxine. You did not survive a dogfight with the Blue Baron just to die of cold. It is not far now. Shakily, Max got to her feet and trudged on. She was so tired, she fought a powerful urge to just lie down on the ground and sleep. It was not long before they arrived at the structure. Dimly, Max thought it must be a farmhouse. She was thrust inside, laid down on a bed. Her eyes were closed, or it was pitch dark, or she was blind. She wasn't sure. Her freezing-soaked clothing was stripped off. Then she felt the heavy weight of blankets. She lay motionless, wondering if she would die, and if that would really be so bad, when a sudden flare of warmth blossomed beside her. Chloe held her close against her bare skin, shivering now. But you're shivering better now, yes? Together we will be one. And Maxine finally gave into sleep. Because that's something you do in the snow, like, because people in Antarctica, like, sometimes if it's really cold and you don't have any heaters, you can freeze, and because the human body apparently lets off more heat than the sun, and so if you're really freezing cold, like if you're in the Antarctic, for example, and all your heaters and power just suddenly turns off, and it's freezing, like hugging someone for warmth naked, like your bodies would produce heat, so it would make you warmer. So, you know, but you only do that when it's really desperate, you know. I do that if it was a last resort. It's not going to be my first resort, but it will be my last resort at survival. So anyways, that's the end of this second fanfic. I hope you all enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next one. This is TotalGamerJunkie, signing off.